real estate investor. He's done a lot of different asset classes. I hope you guys all got to see a little bit of that bio. He had another real estate meetup group that kind of that was awesome, and the first group that I got to go to, so a lot of inspiration there. And so I asked him back because I really love this presentation that he did a few years ago. So also James has a real estate, you call it a startup?
Yeah.
Startup?
It's a software startup.
Real estate technology, it's called Major Domo. And what they do, especially I know we got lots of real estate agents in the crowd tonight. Once you get the inspection report, I'm not going to do a very good job.
I'm curious to see how you do, honestly.
Maybe you should promote it here at the end, or at least give a 2-minute pitch.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's awesome. But basically, you submit the inspection report, they pour through it and give you a great idea on how much those repairs are going to cost. So it really gives clarity to a lot of clients. It also tells you, okay, if I went to do this and somebody that's DIY, here's what the supplies are going to cost versus hiring a professional. And so it takes the scare out of a lot of those inspection reports away, or for investors too, you want to know what things really cost to do. So, and there's a lot of other features to it, but for me, that's the
that's the thing.
It's only like $70.
Yeah, we promised a 24-hour turnaround, but our average is 4 hours.
Yeah, so quick.
The joys of building your own AI.
So with that,
thanks.
Anyway, James, please give it up for James.
Yeah, appreciate it. Just a little more details about my history, just so you know kind of where I'm coming from. So I've got a wife, I've got 2 kids, a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old who I run around with a ton these days. We bought our first place in 2009. It was a duplex, and we timed the market absolutely perfectly. Not that I was a genius, I just happened to graduate in 2007 and saved up enough by then. Moved into one side. They now call it house hacking. That wasn't a word when we did it. And then we bought another duplex, and then we bought a piece of garbage single-family home that we moved into, and we joked that we bought a fixer-upper and didn't fix her up. And then we bought this 11-unit apartment building, and that is a whole nother talk. The brief outline was it was 50% vacant, and 100% of the occupants were registered sex offenders. And so we turned that place around. Some of my friends called it the Sexplex, and it is no longer that. And then it was in that time that we had our first kid, and we slowed down a little bit. We ended up buying a place in Corvallis, and that's where we live now, and we turned that piece of garbage single-family home into a rental. We fixed it up as well. And it was at that point in time where I had some money, but not enough to really go buy another multifamily because I really liked those. And so I was looking around, and that's where I came across this land flipping course, which is what we're going to talk about tonight. And so I took the course, did everything they said to do, bought a piece of land, we'll talk about it, and then from there, I had enough cash to buy 2 more places. And so I bought a 5-unit place in Sweet Home, and then a small storage facility in Lebanon, and that was enough where I could quit my job at HP, and so I did at the end of 2019, with the goal of relaxing in 2020, and little did I know that everybody was doing that around March. And so that timed out really well. When other people were stressed, I was like, this is great. And then just last year, we 1031 those original 2 duplexes and a single family home into a warehouse in Jefferson and with some land, and I'm in the process of figuring out how to build RV storage. So that's my real quick story. And so we're gonna zoom in on just one little part of it because I learned a lot and thought it was super fascinating. And a lot of the lessons I learned from this, I've applied towards rentals, and it's pretty much how I bought my other places using these strategies. So with that, I love making presentations. I miss my days at HP, so I've got all sorts of fun animations for you tonight. We're going to talk about why land, the advantages of it. Then we're going to go into the details of finding owners, of we can move that. Buying the deal and then selling it, ideally for profit. And then I'll give you my actual example at the end with all the numbers. And so I'll walk you through, this is the process I did, and then we'll see the results. And usually the question I get afterwards is wow, why didn't you just keep doing that over and over and over again? Which the answer was I had a chance to quit my job, so I did. I also love quotes. So I have a bunch of those, and this one's by Gary Keller, and it's he wrote an entire book about it actually, which can be boiled down to this one sentence, which is, what's the one thing you can do such that by doing it, everything else will become easier or unnecessary? And so my hope is that by the time we're done, I will have identified some of those things for you, so you don't need to get scared, and you can say, yes, these are the things that I can focus on, this is what I can do, and just make my entire investing career easier. So that's the goal. Also, I do have some source material. Like I said, I took a class, and it was called The Land Profit Generator 2.0 by Jack Bosch. Hilarious guy to listen to. He's got a thick German accent, and just, he has fun when he makes his videos, and so that was the class I took. I also just got a couple, disclosures, I guess. I'm not a realtor, so I'm not like giving you official advice here. This is just me sharing my experience and what I've learned. Cool. If you want to, he definitely he sells this thing, and now that I've taken this course, he is like constantly trying to get me to go to his conference, and so I get all the mail and emails and fun stuff. But it was really good. And interestingly, I was actually on a multifamily, Michael Blanc, I don't know exactly how he pronounces it, but I was following his stuff, and he does all syndication things, and he was like, hey, if you're interested in land, totally different, check this out. And so I did. Seminars and webinars totally work on me. All right, so why land? What's the advantage of it? One of the things is there's no tenants, toilets, or termites, right? So they're just super, super easy, very simple. For the most part, it's just the dirt. Interestingly, there's a lot less competition. So I don't know about you guys, but I get letters for my properties, I don't know, 1 or 2 a week for them, and I've gotten 0 so far for my plot of land. Just one phone call of a guy who actually wanted to rent the space out, and unfortunately the city wouldn't let him, but so a lot less competition for that. The other thing, and I'm going to talk about this, is you can create this flywheel of cash flow if you're, if you sell things right. And it's this way of, you maybe have your initial seed, and you can just kind of keep it rolling and keep it going. And I'll talk about what I learned for that. And then the other really cool part is that you can buy and sell anywhere in the US, and you yourself can be anywhere. So for example, my piece of land was in Indiana. I've never been there. I've never seen it. The closest I ever got was Google Maps. And that's what's cool about it. Again, because there's no tenants, toilets, termites, I mean, it's super easy to do. And then the other part is there's just less capital required. And for me, that was important at my time because I only had like $50,000 sitting in a bank, and I was like, man, just not quite enough to do a big down payment on something. And so with land, because you can buy anywhere, it gives you all sorts of options for, I mean, I was looking today, and there's some options for like $18,000. If you have that, you can get in, or less. So those are some advantages for land. Again, I love quotes, and one of my favorite authors is Dolph de Roos. And he says, a deal of a lifetime comes once a week. And I have found that to be absolutely true. And I have to tell myself that regularly when I miss out on something, that I go, why couldn't I get that? And so I think that's true also for land. And it's another way of saying, like, it's just the law of a lot of numbers. You want to look at a lot of properties, make a lot of deals, or make a lot of offers, and you will find a good deal, even if the one you want gets away. All right, we're going to talk about the specifics of finding the deal. And I would say if you have a question, feel free to shoot up your hand. I'm not afraid to answer on the fly as we're going along. All right, so step one is you want to find a growing MSA, okay? And I define that personally 2 ways. Number one, you've got a growing population and the unemployment trend is positive. And this is, so if you just, you can search for MSA population and MSA unemployment, and there's just stats all on the web, and you can download it, you can throw it in a spreadsheet, and so that's actually what I did. So I found all these different MSAs, and I found their population and unemployment trends over time, and then I just sorted and went, okay, which ones have, seem to be in a good spot. Now, you're not actually going to invest in the big city, you're just looking for a big city, a big area that is growing and healthy. And so in my particular case, I was attracted to Indianapolis, Indiana, which you can tell that's where I ended up buying. I actually went with Colorado Springs because my wife's family is from there, and that's also why I picked the Denver one, because I thought it'd be kind of fun to own something in their backyard. I didn't go for Chicago because I think it was the population. At that time, I was like, it's not growing. I don't like that. I kind of wanted both to be in positive directions. And so that's something that you want to look for. Again, these are just those fundamental measures. And honestly, this is good for anywhere if you're not investing locally, to say, yeah, I want to invest where things are growing and doing well. So once you've done that, the next step is to find potential counties around the MSA. And so who you're going to be targeting are people who they like the city, they want to be kind of close to it, but they no longer want to be in it. Or they're tired of living in the small apartment and they want to buy or build their big dream home. And so those are your ideal people. For me, it just so happened that it was a couple moving from California who wanted to build a dream home and have a quieter little neighborhood. And so those are who you're looking for. A fantastic resource is landwatch.com. And you can go there and you can see land for sale, and then you can filter to around that MSA, and you can even filter by price and size. So you can see here where it starts out with 60,000 results, and you go, okay, nope, I want Indiana. And then from there you can narrow it down to, well, how much cash do you actually have to invest? And so you can start to look there, and then you can narrow it down by parcel size as well. And so this was where I finished my and you want to get it all the way down to counties. And so that was where I identified my counties. And I was just looking on LandWatch to see, is there activity? Are people buying and selling? I'm not actually going to do anything with it. I'm just doing research at this point. And so there was one, like this example in Colorado Springs where it was Douglas County. There just was no activity going on. So I was like, okay, not interesting for whatever reason. People aren't interested in buying and selling in that area. So you want to, again, go where there's some activity.
So,
yeah.
Quick question. So the number in your second to far right column
Yep.
is the number of transactions?
No, it's how many listings were there. Yeah. Is that true? Yeah. More listings, the better. Yes. You can filter between actual sales as well and see like what the activity is. But again, you're just looking for places and counties where there's activities going on. Which, by the way, in my particular case, there's a lot of activity between Indianapolis and Chicago in that little corridor there. The problem was when I filtered it down to being under $50,000, it went to zero. Okay, well, there we go. And so that for me was like, that's a no-go. So I ended up looking southern just because that fit my criteria. So now you've identified your counties, and then what you want to do is you want to get your list of potential owners. There are all sorts of ways to do this. I was lazy, and so I went to listsource.com. And you can also, if you're if you got the time, you can make friends with a title agent, and they can give you the data, and you can look it up that way, and you can do all the data cleaning yourself. Like I said, I just wanted to be done in like 20 minutes, so I just went that. Yeah?
I just went out. List source can scrub it for equity. And
Oh, interesting.
title agents cannot.
Okay, cool, nice. And so when you're going there, all you're gonna do is you're gonna filter down to your criteria, and that's exactly what this is. So I went, okay, I want these two counties, and I want this lot size. I'm looking for vacant land. Here's my assessed value, which was 5 to 50,000. And then I just wanted to make sure I had their address complete, and I excluded corporations because I didn't want to send them letters. And your goal is to get to some number of people, and you want at least 1,000 names on that list. Ideally, it's like 2,000 to 3,000. The numbers are for about every letter you send. It's like it was like every 750 or so, you'll be able to buy a piece of land from every 750 letters. So if you do 2,000, you're like guaranteed to find somebody. And so that's what you're going to do. And when you want it, you want to get not only their name, their mailing address, property address, the lot area coverage, total assessed value, but you also want to get the APN. Because a lot of these properties don't have addresses, and so the only way you're going to find out what it actually is through that APN, and that's an option that they give you within this source. They'll give it to you as well if you talk to a title agent or a title agent, but you got to explicitly ask for that one. You also don't want to do what I did, which is forget the first time around and then have to call ListSource and say, hey, about that, can I do this again and get a refund? They were cool about it, but you want to make sure you get that one. And so this is the mailing list that you're going to use with a letter that you're going to write. An optional thing to do is to generate just an ID tag, which I think mine is right here in this column. And this is an example of just what what my spreadsheet looked like for it. And that ID tag was something that I put on my letter so that when they replied, I could very quickly I could look them up real easily and go, oh yeah, this is the property, here's what we're talking about. It also kind of gave a little professional feel to it, which again, you don't have to do it, but I found it super helpful for the next steps. So we identified an area, we now have a list of people. The next thing is to draft a letter. I used letterprinting.net. There are hundreds of them to choose from. You could do it yourself, I suppose. What's nice about them is they will print and mail it for you, and so you just don't have to worry about it. And my one recommendation is don't use your personal address. Some of the responses you get back are going to be pretty hilarious. I had one lady, she got my letter, and she mailed something totally back to my other address, just with a big N-O taking up the entire page. I was like, all right, cool, I get it. And I'm just trying to think through, like, what's the motivation and the level of anger to say, like, no, I'm actually going to take the time to write this out, refold it, get a new envelope, send it to you, pay for postage, instead of just throwing it away, but whatever. And so this was the letter that I wrote, and it's very straightforward. Hello, first name, I'm writing to you because public records show that you're the owner of this real property in such and such a place. I'm very interested in buying it from you. This I borrowed a lot from the course that I took, and so it was a little like, there's some sales pitch to it because that's the nature of it. I personally like the letter, like the white envelope folded format. I know that yellow letters work and are very successful. I just personally don't like the way they look, so I don't use them. But that is just as valuable or a reasonable way to do it. Now, in my particular letter, what I did was I created a website, and I just called it furlofamilyhomes.com because that's the name of my company. And what I told people is, look, you can either call this phone number, and I'll tell you about the resources and how all that worked, or visit my website, and we can get you all pre-qualified and go from there. And so my whole goal of the letter was to get people to click on that URL, well, not click, I guess, but to type in that URL into their browser. And I probably could have picked a shorter one, but I didn't. And if you want to see it, you can actually, it's still live today, so you could visit furlofamilyhomes.com and you can see what you're about to see from a screenshot standpoint. So people would go there, and then I just had a simple squeeze page, and yeah, that's me, right? Yeah, it's a little younger. And so you capture your leads with either a phone system or your messages. Now, back at the time, I actually used something called Virtual Phone, and I actually went to the website and tried to tool around and relog in, and it wouldn't let me. So I'm like, all right, I guess you guys don't exist anymore or something. And today I use openphone.com for my business. I love it because I can have multiple phone numbers. So I have a whole separate one for people reserving storage units, and it's actually super sweet because you can send an instant text message back to somebody, and because our whole reservation system's online. So the second someone calls, if you can't tell I'm into that, I'm like, go to the website and do it that way. You can also use voice.google.com. At the time, there was a limit for how long of a message you can send. I believe they have lifted that limit now, so there is a free option. It's worth trying. And the message is very similar to what is written on this page, just verbally taking them through. Hey, here's the offer, here's the benefits, here are the next steps, tell me about your place. And so that's what I did. So again, you can visit that website to see it up close if you wanted to. And what I did was I created a video, which you can see is really professionally done. It's me in my bedroom recording a video, and just telling people, again, telling them what I said on the phone message, but in video format, and then just reiterating it underneath with bullet points and a nice big button that says, sell my land for cash. And there are other solutions as well. The one I used is I use leadpages.net. They're more expensive, but I was using them for other projects as well, so it just made sense for me to leverage it. MailChimp does offer free landing pages. You can make it off of that. And then Google also has, they call it Google Sites. So you could make a web page from there, and the link just takes them to this next step, which I'll show you. So they see the letter, they go to the website, they watch the video, they click the button. Yeah, I'm interested. The next thing that I sent them to was a Google form. And it was really straightforward and basic. I'd ask them, okay, what's your name? How do I get a hold of you? And then this is where I asked them for that reference number on the lower part of that message so that I could quickly look up their property and learn all about them, because I wasn't going to go through all 1,000 ahead of time. I was like, I'll just wait to see who's interested. Asked them if they owned anything else, asked them that the address was correct, and then I actually had a second page where they would tell me more about the property, what was on it, like the utilities, and were there any improvements done. Just double check that they're the owner of record. Just trying to go through some of those basic getting started questions. And I'm trying to remember what the, it asks them some history, right? How did you acquire it? And I'll even ask them what's your estimated value for it. And almost all of them are optional. The only ones that were required was their name and phone number. And so they could skip if they wanted to. I found most people filled out all the questions. They didn't, they were interested in selling, so like, yes, I'll give you the answers.
You said you did ask them for their estimated value?
Yeah. It was near the end. Yeah, what's your estimated value for the property? And then I say, if we could pay cash and close on any date you want, what would be the least that you would take for the property? And then I'd ask if it's currently listed with an agent. So just trying to get a feel for where they're at. The person who I ended up buying from had inherited it from her father and wanted to move to Mexico and was looking for some spending cash. I'm like, all right, cool. And so that was what I learned through this forum here. As I've already said, I love Dolph de Bruce, and so I've got another quote of his, very quotable guy in my opinion, and it's fall in love with the deal, not the property. And so this was probably the first of 3 properties I've bought and got under contract without seeing it, because I am all about the numbers, and so I think that's something really important here with the land, because this is all just a numbers game. And so that's something to keep in mind here. And that's one of the reasons why I don't have to go visit. It's okay. If the numbers make sense, and you'll see what I mean by that in this next slide, you go for it. So next step is to contact them and try to buy it, or at least make the offer. So the first thing you can do is, now that you have the information for the land, find comps for their property's value. You can go to LandWatch, or you can call a local realtor. I did both for mine, and it was pretty fun talking with the agent on the phone, because he was like, man, if you, when we were talking about the approximate price, he was like, man, if you can buy it for that, that's a sweet deal. Good luck with that though. And I was like, well, we'll see. And so super helpful to get an idea for what the value is, especially if it's not in this area. So you call the owner, you build rapport, and then you make them an offer. There's a fantastic book that I have since read called Never Split the Difference. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. It is a book about negotiation, but it's also just about tactical empathy. Here's how to listen, here's how to hear them, here's how to get their story, so that you have more information to come up with an offer that works for them. And so that's what you do. And then you make your opening offer. And I know these numbers sound crazy, but it's 10 to 25% of the market value. Now in this lady's case, she didn't care what the market value was. She cared that she was leaving for Mexico in 2 weeks. And she was like, man, the peso's worth nothing, whatever. She just wanted out. And so that's the opening bid that you want to make. And you want your maximum offer to be 50% of the market value of it. That's as high as you want to go. And again, it's really, in essence, you're wholesaling. And so that's kind of where those ratios start to come out. And because there's less competition and it's a simple process, you can actually again, it's within every 1,000, you're going to find someone who says, yeah, I'm interested. And then the other thing, which I really liked, is you just offer to pay any and all closing costs, and you offer them that net amount. Again, it's part of the service that you're providing for them. It makes it simple. It makes it easy for them to say yes. And especially in some of these cases, you're not paying hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so for them to go, man, I just got dinged by $1,500, they feel that. And so to just take that off the plate for them or off the table for them is super helpful. Now, here's a big difference between real estate. So the sale agreement, it's a page. It's so easy. It is essentially saying, look, here's the seller, here's the buyer, here's what we're buying, here's the price, here's the date we're closing, and the procedure is we're going to take it to a title agency and let them just handle all the closing. It's super easy. And I used eversign.com to sign the agreement, because you get 5 for free every single month, and I didn't want to spend any money. Today I have DocuSign. It's a little better, but EverSign's great. There are a couple other free ones out there as well if you wanted to. Now the important part is to find a local title agency to handle the closing. And so I went with, I think it was Fidelity, because they had offices in both places, and so I didn't have to they could do the whole transfer documents thing. But you want to find one and work with a local office, and you definitely want to go through one. You don't want it to be like, hey, you go to the courthouse and sign over a deed and I'll hand you a check. No, just go through the third-party person. And that definitely helps with the, hey, I'm going to pay for everything, don't worry about it, part of it. And it just tells them, yeah, we're keeping this above board. You're a professional. You're not just trying to come in and grab a property for nothing. Now, you can do this, and the recommendation is you pick a closing that is as far out as possible. Now, in my case, she was leaving in 2 weeks, so I went, well, I guess we're doing 1 week and 6 days. And which was fine for me and where I was at. But there are certain strategies where if you can get the closing to extend out even a month or two, again, just like a classic wholesaler, you potentially don't need any money to do the deal. And so if you're buying it legitimately at 20% of its market value, you can turn around and wholesale it to someone else at 50 to 70% of the property's value relatively quickly, and do a double close, and you didn't need any cash to get started. Yes?
It looks like you do have buyer and or assignee, right? So you did
yes.
Make sure that language
Yep.
is in there.
Yep. Yeah. I did. Yes. Again, did I mention I love quotes yet? And so this one I really like. It's by Ramit Sethi. He has nothing to do with real estate. He's just good at business stuff. And he says, once you're in your client's head and can address their burning needs, price becomes a mere triviality. And so that's the part of the rapport and why it's important to understand where they're coming from and what they're looking to get out of it. For the lady who I was helping, timing was the most critical thing. And so that was where I optimized. And the price was not quite as important to her, which you'll see. So as I talked about, there are some different strategies that you can do it. And so here are some different pricing strategies on the selling side of things. Okay, so you've got it. It's either under contract or if you just bought it. So the first one is you can just sell it for full market value. And that could take a while. That could take 1 or 2 years. But if you've got the cash or you're expecting the market to do something big in the future, sure, wait around for it. That totally works. The other one is to wholesale it for cash, again, at that 50 to 70% value. You're not going to earn as much, but you might be able to flip it faster and just increase your velocity of money, that flywheel. And so it's one of those where it's yeah, I might have gotten full market value, but if I waited for 2 years, in the meantime, I could have done I could have done 5 additional transactions and actually ended up with more in the future. And in my opinion, you're just not sitting on this asset for as long and just waiting around, and so it seems less risky, in my opinion. And then the last one, which I find really intriguing, and I did not buy cheap enough to do this, but if I had, I would have done it, which is to offer financing. So if you could offer it, if you're buying the property for, say, 20% down, you could offer someone financing where you say, look, all you got to do is pay your 5 to 20% down and then make payments over the next, 5 to 10 years. And so ideally, you can get all the money that you put into the property out, and then you just have this stream of income coming in afterwards. Super intriguing, and I know that's what a lot of people who do regular land flipping, this is eventually what they get into, and this is actually the majority of where their income comes from, is from the interest in those payments over time. And so, cool strategy. If you're able to buy it at amounts where those numbers all work out, I guess. Hopefully that makes sense. So once when you're getting ready to sell, in my opinion, the very first thing you should do, and this is I got it under contract, but I haven't closed yet, is get that thing on the Craigslist. That's something you can do on your own, and there are all sorts of people, especially if you're going down the wholesaling strategy, there are all sorts of people looking for deals. So you could just use Google Maps for your images. That's what I did. That's as far as I got. I'm pretty sure there's some copyright rule I broke, but they have cool little flyover, turn 3D stuff, and so I got some cool images. You'll see them and you'll go, really, that's all Google Maps? You go, yep. Super helpful. And so I listed it, I guess, as Facebook Marketplace a place for land? I don't know, but I would list it there too. And you just want to make sure when you do it, you write it from the buyer's point of view. You could list it on LandWatch. That is not free, but you could do it there. And you could also work with a local broker after closing, which is ultimately what I ended up doing for mine. And so this was an actual ad that I wrote. And again, what I did was I went on to LandWatch and I looked at a whole bunch of their listings and went, okay, which ones look cool? Which ones seem to have good descriptions? And I kind of put it all together into one where I said, yeah, this seems like a complete type of listing. So in it, I'm talking about, it's this amazing property. I talk about the overall value. And for me, I discounted it down at that 70%. And then I talked about the benefits of it. And it has your dream house ever included the following. And then I just talk about how it could be 1,900 square feet with living space and ample kitchen. I'm actually talking about what the house could be. Here's what you could build, not describing the land, because that's pretty boring. And so it's really just like painting that dream and that picture. Here's what you could do on this place. And so again, that's what you're going to do is you're going to sell it on, or again, the other option is you go with your agent. Now the interesting part for me was I went with a broker and he asked me, he goes, hey, do you have any pictures that we can use? I was like, oh yeah, sure. And so I sent him all my Google Maps images and that's what we ended up using. I don't know if he actually ever visited the property either, to be honest. And I think he put a sign out, but that worked for me just because it was a totally different time zone. He got to handle the calls and I paid him a fee, but it was okay. It worked out for me. My advice before heading into the actual numbers of the deal comes from Mark Zuckerberg, the owner of Facebook, or Meta now. It says, done is better than perfect. And so my recommendation is even if you're still trying to figure things out, which for me, I was as I was taking this class, I was doing these steps. And one of them, my wife was like, so what happens if someone calls? I was like, I don't know yet, but I'm going to get to that in a couple days in the class, and we'll go from there. And so that's my recommendation. This is probably enough where you go, okay, I think I could get started. Perfect, then get started. And kind of go from there.
James, question.
Yeah.
Just on the marketing side, if you have something under contract, are you marketing the contract then for sale, or are you
Yes.
allowed?
You could do a double close. Or you could sell the contract. For me, in the actual ad, I didn't get into the minutia of that. It was, hey, once someone's interested, I'll talk to them on the phone. If they actually want to buy it, then I'll get into the technical details of, okay, here's how we're going to do it. But until then, it didn't really matter. I had, I think one, maybe two people. I definitely remember one conversation with someone who saw the Craigslist ad and he called me and he was also looking to buy at a very cheap price, so it didn't work. But yeah, and that would have been how. And by the time the agent got involved, that already closed. So now it was, just a simple transaction. All right, here's the actual property. So here's some, and the next slide are all the numbers. So it was this 1.4 quarter acre. And so I had stuff where I said, look, here's Indianapolis, it's right there. Here it is next to the town, it's just outside of it. Here it is in the town from a satellite view, a little more. And so it was just different levels. And then just like the street view views of it. And then they had a cool satellite, you can kind of do like a tilt angle thing. Those were my photos that I did. It was super easy, never had to visit, just did some careful cropping. Was about it. Super easy. Thankfully, Google visited in a time when it was really nice that part of the year, so it wasn't all snowy. So that was, so the listing was with the words from the previous one, and then those were the photos for it. And at least for me, I found myself saying okay, what's the context for where this thing is located? And part of it is, there's no address. All you have is this APN. And so I wanted to be very explicit, here's where this thing is, because at least in this part of town, there were some different roads that you could very easily get confused on, wait, is it southwest or northwest? And so that was part of why I got crazy explicit about pointing dots. Here's where this thing is. All right, now for the fun one. All right, so these are my results. Here's how it went for me. So I took this online class and I spent $1,500 on it. I had a phone system. Open phone is $25. Google Voice is free. The website service that I'm using is $300 a year. But again, I'm using it for some other stuff. You do not have to pay that whatsoever. And so on this website, I sent, I mailed I got 3,000 names from ListSource, and I just kept kind of filtering it down until I got to around there. I mailed out 1,000 letters, and I was going to mail out more. It was just one of those where I actually wasn't sure what kind of volume I personally could handle at the time. And so I said, well, I'll start with 1,000, and then once that works through the system, I'll do another 1,000, and once that works through the system, I'll do another 1,000. That was kind of my planning there. You do get a little bit of a discount the more letters you send, but I didn't care. I was willing to just pay a little extra for it. Turns out I only had to send 1,000, so I actually saved, so that was cool. From the 1,000 letters, I got 6 calls, and I had 3 people leave voice messages. On the website, I had 68 people who visited, 22 people who actually watched the video, and then 10 people who filled out that Google form. So I guess that's a 1% response rate.
Does that compare pretty close to what the class taught you?
A little lower than what he was saying, because he was like, oh, you should get like 3 to 5%, I guess. Now, I guess they were thinking more of this number, I think, which in that case, yeah, I did really well, at 6.8. But yeah, no, so that was, so I think I did all right. And from what I understand versus like regular calling, and I have done this with just buying a multifamily in this area, and my numbers were not nearly as good when I did it here. Now, they were good enough that I ended up buying a place. But anyways, so that was kind of my funnel that people went through. And so this actual place that I bought it in December of 2017. I bought it for $40,000. I had done the research in the area. Land was selling for about $89,000 to $90,000. So I felt like I came in at that 50% marker. And this was the agent. He was like, "Oh my gosh, like no way you'll buy it for that." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And so bought it for that. For the purchase closing, it was $1,100, which again I paid 100% of it. And then in June, I sold it for $75,000, again, to that couple in California who was looking to move up and get away from the heat, I guess. And so with that, my closing costs and commissions were a little over $7,000. So my net profit from the sale was $26,000. And then when I subtract out the mailing expenses, it got me down to $25,500. And then I'm pretty sure this number is higher than it needs to be. But I invested $40,000 into the property. I spent money on an online class, I spent money on a website, and then I left those out because they were taken out here. But anyways, I got a 50% ROI on doing that, 58% ROI on doing that deal for 6 months. So from an annualized number, that's pretty good. So that was my deal. And like I said, I could have kept going, but I started doing math, and I knew that I now had enough cash that would let me buy enough rental properties that I quit my job. And so I quickly shifted gears and said, all right, time to find another multifamily. And so I did this exact same thing where I created a new website with a new video. I got a new list. I created a new letter that was all focused on multifamily. So the entire idea of it was the same. I was just talking about a different property. And so I sent those out all to the area. And ultimately, I got some responses, and I found a guy in Sweet Home who was tired of owning his property and sold it to me for what he bought it for 6 years earlier, which I was okay with. And and so went through that same process and had enough left over that I could buy another place, which was cool. So that's the end of the fire hose. Yeah.
Speaking of the Sweet Home property, how many letters? Was it similar numbers that you sent out and that kind of thing?
No, because there weren't 3,000 people in the area. So I don't think I hit 1,000. It was more like 700, 800. And I just sent it to everybody. Well, we'll see. And that was what I did. And I was focused in this area. Obviously, I went as far as Sweet Home. I think I went down to Eugene. I may not have gone that far. But yeah, that was what I ended up doing.
So what other things would you say that you would need to translate or change from doing this strictly for land versus looking for residential small multifamily?
Yeah, so some things that would need to change. Obviously, the messaging is going to be slightly different. Well, one big one was for the land, I was buying for cash. For the multifamilies, I wasn't doing that. I knew I had a down payment, but I was going to get regular financing. So I changed the language behind that and focused a lot more on, are you tired of dealing with tenants? Are you tired of dealing with maintenance? Are you ready to just move on with your life? And I never promised that I was going to buy for cash. I know some people do, and then they'll flip it and say, oh yeah, no, let's just get financing. I didn't do that, so that was a change that I made. The research process was also different, right? So this one I was able to go to LandWatch and look anywhere in the United States and kind of narrow it down to my area. This was one where I already knew it was here. And so then my big question was, okay, well, what kind of asset size am I going for? Am I going for a single family home, a duplex? And I purposely went for that, I guess it's the 5 to, however they break it down, 10 units or 15 units. I went for that area because I knew I didn't want to play in that 1 to 4 unit space. But that was just that was a personal decision that I made, and I knew I had enough capital where that was the kind of property I wanted to buy. And so, so just the research process is different. But after that, it's like, okay, I've got my letter that I've tweaked and its website that I've tweaked. And if you don't want to do the website thing, you don't have to. Just put up a phone number, record a message, and just have people call you. Like that is what most people do. You do not have to go down the more technical route. I do know the people who I talk to go, wow, super professional, loved it. That gave me confidence that you could actually buy it. So there is something to be said about giving off those different success triggers, but you don't have to do it. And then from there, yeah, it's the nice part about that one is you don't necessarily need the APN either. You just get the address and you can start looking it up. And yeah, so like this property in Sweet Home, part of me was like, oh, it's such a far drive. I don't want to go check it out. I'll just make an offer and see what happens. And then I happened to be traveling when he got back to me, and I did it all like sitting in a car on a laptop doing the offer. And so, and that was afterwards. Then I set up a time to go actually check it out and look at it. But so in some sense, not a whole lot different. But yeah, the things that the big learnings were the idea of, okay, what do you actually write in this letter, and what do you say, and that will motivate people who are already motivated will go, yes, this is for me. They'll self-select into it. And just that whole process of, oh yeah, you can buy a list and just send it to people. And one thing I tried was on one of them I did, it's like a bulk media mail. Like you have different mailing options. And for one of them, for the land one, I did the cheapest one possible. And it was okay, but it kind of gets sent out in it gets sent out in bulk, and you never know if people, there's no return address on it. And I didn't love that experience because I just wasn't sure if people were getting things. And so for the multifamilies, I actually paid a little bit more so that if the letter got returned, it would come back to me. Because I was just kind of curious, what's the deliverable rate on that? And at the time I was like, I may have to send this to, a few more times. I want to know who's hitting or not hitting. And more importantly, if there's someone where the letter's not getting to them and they still definitely own it, does that mean there's an opportunity for me to do some more sleuthing and find them, because it means that they're getting, no one's getting to them the traditional route. And so for that reason, I paid a little bit more to get the mail to come back to me. And I probably feel a little bad for pack mail because there were quite a few that came back. It just filled up my box, but it's all good. And that was the other one. Yeah, I did pack mail as opposed to a P.O. box just because I wanted to look at as much like a regular address as possible, which is pretty funny. I get tenants all the time. Hey, can I swing by your office? I'm like, no, you cannot. But yeah.
Keep going here, sorry. So with the video, obviously a goal of that is to show that you're a real person. And so do you talk, your URL is Furlo family. Do you kind of talk that up or talk about your family or anything else as far as goals or to set yourself apart from a corporation or anything like that?
I think just the fact that I have this video and it's me talking, and that alone kind of sets this, oh, he's not a big corporation, he's just a guy who's doing it. But it also sets me apart from the guy who's sending the yellow letter and saying, call me back. So I kind of fit in this middle zone there of, ooh, he's trying, and he's trying well. It's kind of and I like to sit there. So the video itself is 100% focused on them. It is just pure, here's why you should sell, here's your benefits, take action, that kind of stuff. So I don't talk a lot about me, other than maybe saying, hey, we're buying properties in the area, we own here, we like here, we're ready to buy, and just that, and that's kind of the extent of it. Yeah, I do know, I did have some other people who I talked to, especially on the multifamily side, where they would look me up and they would saw my other social stuff online, like, oh, cool, he's a real guy and he's got a family and neat. And so I definitely know that happened. But yeah, no, and I wasn't like, and it was, I got a iPhone stand thing and just kind of set it up and hit the record button and kind of went for it. And I did the like, I'm not great at memorizing scripts, is one of the things I've learned. And so I had a script because I knew I didn't just want to just go. And I would look at the line and go, okay, all right, I want you to, okay. And then I would say it to the camera. And then once I said that line, I would then, okay, let me look at the next line. And then I just went into my video editor and just cut out all the middle stuff. So just like very quick jump cuts, but it all kind of flows together into just a single kind of soliloquy. But that was what I ended up doing. Today I would probably do it a little bit better, but not a lot better. I mean, today, like thanks to Zoom, I have a big sheet that now everything's behind. So that's the big difference. And I have one of those halo light things, and my camera's better. But yeah, anyways, that's what I would do. Keep it simple. There it is. Any other questions?
What parts of the whole process would you do differently now looking back at it? Maybe not that you've done it before already.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's a pretty well thought out process. Yeah. And again, I don't get 100% credit for discovering it. It was me following a class and saying, yeah, and then putting my own spin on it. And I tried to move pretty quick. So that was, again, just like, I don't know if I would change that too much. I may spend some time just on the copy some more, just like, hey, let me try to refine this, make it better. Like I said, the one thing I did change was the mailing type that I sent out. I did a little bit, first class stamps, not the cheapest. That was definitely a change. I would be interested in experimenting with yellow letters. Maybe, I don't know, I'd have to get over the gut reaction I have from it. But there's that. No, I think it was like pretty good process. At the time, I was working full time, and so what I didn't want to do was get a bunch of phone calls. I didn't want to get 68 phone calls and then be like, all right, time to return these guys, because in theory they get them all like the same day, and so they, these all of these visits came within like 3 days. And that was something where I wanted to create some friction before I had to talk to someone. I wanted them to pre-qualify themselves. So I liked that. Potentially, if I tried this and I found people dropping off, well, I'd probably go, okay, what's wrong with my video or my website? But that may be a change that I would make and say, okay, I'm just going to go to the phone and try to answer these and actually talk to people on the phone. I don't know if I'm confident enough to do that on the fly. That sounds very scary to me. Whereas this was super nice, because when I got their thing, I could look it up, I could do the research, so I knew exactly what my initial offer was, I knew what my max was, and now I was just trying to figure out, okay, why are you selling, and how do I connect these two dots? So I really like that, for me, personally. Yeah, and I was technical enough where I could build everything, and so that wasn't a hurdle for me. I would say, like, if you were like, man, I don't know how to do this website stuff, I'm gonna hire someone to make this, I go, no, don't do that. Like, just do the voice message and it'll be okay. And after a couple of transactions, then you can hire someone, I guess. But if it's working, you'll probably never do it. Yeah.
How many offers?
Well, sorry, you got to take a turn.
You might have said this at the beginning, but which online class?
It's called Land Profit Generator 2.0 by Jack Bosch. Some random. Yeah, I thought it was good. Yeah, I mean, my return on the investment was pretty good. If you're actually going to do it, it was great. One of the things I liked about the class was he was like, here's the exact script that I say for the voice message. Here's the exact script that I use for my letter. And for me, like, I knew the theory behind it and the principles, but just to get that actual verbiage was super helpful. And I didn't adapt exactly what he said, even though he was like, do exactly this. I'm like, no, I'm going to do my own thing. But it was just, I'm a curator by nature. And so just to have those examples of, okay, cool, now I can pull this together and do it. So that alone for me was super valuable. Was it worth $1,500? Probably. But I regularly, like, I spend and invest in education stuff. I almost bought another one, like a $300 class before coming here tonight because I was learning about it. I'm like, oh yeah, this sounds interesting, and I'm bored. Let's go for it. So for me, this was kind of a no-brainer. Yeah, let's do it. If you're going to take it just to kind of learn and not take action, nah, don't spend the money. It's not worth it because it is very specific to doing this. But yeah, I thought it was good. If you're interested, yeah.
How many offers did you end up making to people?
Oh, good question. I was just the one, honestly. And part of it was when I got the 10 responses and I read her reasoning behind it, I was like, ooh, I want to call her first. And so that was what I did. And which is another benefit of doing it this way. And yeah, and it was on the phone call. She was like, dude, I'm leaving in 2 weeks. Like, let's get down to brass tacks. I was like, all right, cool. And so I very quickly got committed to that path. I did call the other people just to kind of see where they were at. And there were a couple where they were still just like, they were looking to get top dollar. And I was like, well, that was an easy conversation. And there was a couple even when they filled out the form were like, oh yeah, like clearly you're selling, like, yeah, you want to get market value for it. There were a couple others where I was like, oh, let me run some numbers, and if I'm interested, I'll get back to you. That's how I worded it. And but with her, I mean, like, we came to an agreement, like, on the phone, and so the only thing that I was worried about was something just didn't pan out. But I knew it was all happening fast enough that I didn't have to make any other offers, if that makes sense. Yeah. She was highly motivated. That was nice. Yeah. There it is. I am by no means the expert on it, but it was a lot of fun. I made some money. That also helps. Doing taxes that year was kind of a bear because I got to do it in multiple states, and that's why you have a good tax advisor, but it was all good. Yeah?
So when you went through the process of like narrowing it down to Indianapolis, did you, by chance, did you look into Oregon at all, or was it kind of?
Yeah, yes, I wanted to see where it showed up on the list for certain. Part of it is there's only really one MSA in Oregon, right, and that's Portland. And and it was whatever ones, it was the population or employment. It was okay, but it couldn't compare with some of those other rates that they were experiencing. And so it was just one of those where I just shrugged my shoulders. Oh, and part of it was just price too, right? Like that was my other criteria. So I looked in a couple different places because I was like, oh, maybe it'd be cool to own something near Bend. I don't know. And I broke my rule and said, I know it's not near an MSA, but hey, why not? But again, the numbers just didn't. I fall in love with the deal, not the location. So that's what I chased.
Can you talk about some of the criteria a little bit more detail of how you got to Indianapolis?
Yeah, I mean, so it really was those two main measures. Yeah, and so I've found some database, and it's probably different by now, but it was like, okay, give me a list of every single MSA. And then I looked up, and somewhere I found a database that had, okay, here are the population trends for the last 10 years. I'm like, cool, because I was looking for a year over year, like a sustained growth amount. And then I was looking, and then I found another data source that had employment numbers, and I had to do a little bit of like data cleaning and put it together to get them to all line up. But then once I did that, it was really like, okay, time to sort. Let's sort it by population. Let's sort it by unemployment. And I could have created some cool weighting algorithm, but I was like, I'm just going to look and just get an idea, and I'll highlight the top ones, and then I'll highlight the top ones again and see which ones pop up. So that was what I did. And it was really just those two, because the idea being, okay, if populations are going up, that there's something good that's going on. If unemployment's down, again, that means people got jobs, they've got money, and chances are that they're going to want to start spreading out. There will be someone who just doesn't want to live in the city anymore, or they like the city but they're willing to commute and they want the small school or the big yard or something. And so that was the main criteria that I went after. And again, you want to do the MSA just because it's such a big area that you just have a lot of people to draw from. But you don't want to do that, the actual city. It's all about the surrounding counties is kind of that trick. Yeah.
Last question for me. Have you ever looked on Google Maps to see if those people built in the last?
Ooh, no, I haven't. I probably should. That's a good idea. That would be interesting, actually. No, I haven't. But yeah, I mean, they bought it to build a house, so I'm going to assume that they did. Yeah, that's a good idea. No, I've yet to visit, and just kind of went, all right, cool, done with that. I'm still on that agent's mailing list, though, so I get his Christmas cards and other stuff, which I don't think I'll do another deal with him, but hey, it's all good.
And I think you said, what was the market value of this property?
Oh, it was guessed to be in that like $89,000, $90,000 range.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was, based on what other similar properties had sold for, talking with the agent, he was like, yeah, somewhere in there. And so I went for, I think I had it listed at like 80,000. And so they came in with a different offer and I was like, yeah, let's do it. And so my goal was to be a little bit under market with that because I didn't want to wait 1 to 2 years, but I had some time. And so I was like, yeah, we'll price it in such a way where I think it'll sell relatively quickly, but I don't need it to sell in the next 20 days. So that was what I ended up doing. Yeah. Yeah. There it is. There's land flipping. All right.